Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you in another video. Alright, so it's like 2 in the morning, and I've had an idea for a basketball video all day long. So I'm going to do what it is that I intend to do, which is talk about players who I think could be breaking out this upcoming season, who happen to be young players, anyone within their development stage. Um, I had the notion to write down a bunch of players, check out names, and just, you know, get organized. But to be honest with you, I decided to wing it with this video. So there are going to be some names that subsequently are just not going to be mentioned. It's not because I'm not excited about them, it's because they didn't come to mind in the moment. So that's my disclaimer before we get started. I am literally winging it. So I'm just going to name guys at absolute random, and I'll just say I think they're going to be on the verge of making steps forward for themselves, and we'll see where it goes. So I listened to JJ Redick, and he kind of put this in my head more or less. I took the topic from him for those who are wondering. Um, Shout out to him for sure in his podcast. So the names that he came with are right away were Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. So I won't necessarily say anything other than I'm adding them as well to my list. It's not that I have Cleveland breaking out. It's just that these guys are on par to continue to get better, and they've already been stellar. Evan Mobley started his career solid. His first year, his rookie season was solid. Did he get rookie of the year? No, they gave that to Scotty Barnes, but he was right there with him. It could have been either or. And ultimately, it did go to Scotty, but he's been fantastic defensively, working on various different things. The thing that caught my eye about him was the fact that he moved laterally very quickly. Can guard players that are smaller than him. I don't watch as much Cleveland since he's been drafted, so I don't know if they exploit that as much, but him next to Allen has always been a tandem, and I thought it could be really, really dangerous for many years to come. Darius Garland, the same thing. He's just an incredible young guard. I would have drafted him with the 4th overall pick if I had my way with the Lakers that year. We ended up trading that in an AD trade. They sent it to Atlanta. Atlanta took DeAndre Hunter. I was vehemently against that. And still am. Darius Garland is one of the very best young point guards in the league, and because he is so young and already at such a high level, I'm not sure where he's headed as it pertains to his upside, but I am damn sure that this is an all-star player who's going to continue to play at that level so long as his health allows him to do it. He has extreme handles. He's a very, very gifted player dribbling the ball. He's very gifted shooting the ball. He's very gifted at making plays for others. He's very volume-esque, meaning that I expect his numbers to be absolutely crazy as he continues to get better. So that's the first couple of names I wanted to throw out there, because Cleveland does have some guys, and you may want to pay attention to Imani Bates, because I just love the role that he's in Cleveland, and I don't think they have the greatest bench, even though they did some things to address their bench situation. I think they gave too much money to too few players, and because of it, there's going to be some roles open for some guys who likely would not play as much in different situations, I believe, depending on how much their coach wants to shorten their bench throughout the course of the regular season. But I think there will be a very real role for young Imani Bates, so he's also on that Cleveland team that I think is going to be pretty good this year. So that's the first couple of names. The second team I kind of want to shift to is the Pacers. They are my sleeper breakout team of the year. I am very excited about just about every guard on that team. And I think they all have a chance to break out. Nembhard is the name that comes to mind first. He just really, really, really showed me something. Andrew Nembhard, last year with the Pacers going up against the Lakers, shot us down and locked up our guard pretty much the entire time he was on him. He just played stellar in both sides of the floor, and I really believe in what I saw there. And you couple that with the high level of the guards around him, as we've already said. Guys like Ben Mathurin, who's likely going to play the 3, but I look at as a guard. Very, very efficient, can play some defense as well, very athletic. I expect for him to have a massive breakout. If not this year, the next year, he's going to be one of the better players, period, I think, playing the wing before it's over with. And then you look at guys that they just picked up like Jarris Walker. I don't know what type of role he'll have to start his career, so I'm not putting him in the breakout category as a rookie, but I do think that he fits perfectly there. And you just love what they have, man. Straight up and down, you just love what they have. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton. If we were going to mention Darius Garland, it makes sense to mention Tyrese Halliburton because they're both the same class. They both already signed their max contracts, so I'm not going to exclude them from this. From this, I think Tyrese Halliburton's already proven himself to be basically a superstar as far as I can tell. And just like Darius Garland, he's volume, high assists, high scoring, very good defensively. I just think the world of Tyrese Halliburton. I think he's going to be one of the very best point guards when it's all said and done, so long as he has a full, healthy career and is able to do good things in Pacerland. So I love the situation. I love the fit. I do think they have a little bit of a guard lock. I think it's a little bit locked up, but ultimately they have good two-way players that are all very young, that all can be interchangeable, that could all play good small ball lineups. I just really, really love the Pacers' young team this year. You add Bruce Brown to that. Miles Turner's still there, Buddy Hield's still there. I'm just really excited about the young tandem of players that they have, and I don't think there is a young player on that team that I'm not excited about. I don't think there is one. So that's what I want to say about them. Just extremely excited about them. Malachi Branham of the San Antonio Spurs. I shift over to San Antonio because obviously they got Wembanyama. Calling him a breakout seems a little strange, but since I put again, Garland and Ty Halliburton in there, obviously you don't want to mention the Spurs without mentioning Wembanyama. So we just did. But the names that come to mind that I think are guys that could really step forward this year, Malachi Branham. That's the name of the guy. He just really, really showed me some fantastic things at the end of the year with the San Antonio Spurs by way of his stats. When I had him on one of my fantasy teams, he was stellar every time they had him on the floor. He was very relevant in fantasy, and I don't think many knew it. One of the best kept secrets out there. Malachi Branham of the San Antonio Spurs is a very, very solid wing that I think is only going to step forward even more so. And San Antonio is also a team that has a lot of young players that you should be excited about. Another guy by the name of Jeremy Sohan. The trajectory of his career just went from extremely good to possibly key role player on a championship contender for the rest of his career. Like, that is a very good situation for Jeremy Sohan. For one, he has a type of skill set and tough guy, power forward ways about him that's ultimately going to complement Wembanyama. He will allow Wembanyama to have some relief as a young player right next to him who was only drafted a year before with a lot of high-level upside at that front court. I don't think there's anything not to like about Jeremy Sohan as it pertains to him being next to Wembanyama, given the fact that Wembanyama's perimeter eccentric to a degree, and Sohan could do a lot more dirty work in the paint to complement that. So I just think when you got those two players, you could think of Wembanyama as the only guy in San Antonio if you want to, but believe me, they do have complementary pieces that are very, very high in upside. And you gotta love what Branham looks like. You gotta like Blake Wesley as well for that San Antonio squad. Tyus Jones' little brother, Trey Jones, also fantastic young guard that they have. And as we mentioned earlier in the video, I just really like what they did by bringing themselves some key vets. They haven't gotten Evan Fournier as of yet, but I do not think it'll be too difficult for them to convince the Knicks to give them that contract if they're serious about it. And he's the right young player to help Wembanyama go forward. Speaks French. Obviously, they're both from the homeland. And just a really fantastic shooting wing at this point that's not expected to do too much, but just contribute to the overall maturity of the roster. So looking at the San Antonio Spurs, if they were able to get that piece, they got Cedi Osman, they got Campaign. I just think that their young players on that team have some good vets in that locker room that are going to help them. And because of it, you can expect all of them to step forward surrounding Wembanyama to start winning. Start the process of being a team with high hopes. So I don't know that they make the playoffs or anything like that, but they got a nice crop of young players around Wembanyama that we should all be very excited about. Next name that comes to mind is my very own Los Angeles Lakers. We got a bunch of players that you should be excited about too. But the name that comes to mind immediately is Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves just signed his contract. Very, very solid deal. 4 years. I don't remember exactly the framework. Under $60 million. But he's going to be able to step into the Los Angeles Lakers starting lineup as either a point guard, shooting guard, or small forward. And basically be one of the smartest players on the team. Obviously, you don't want to disrespect LeBron James, his high IQ. Anthony Davis been in this league for many years. But I think Austin Reeves could arguably be the smartest basketball player we got in that young core. He's just fantastic at just about everything you ask him to do on the offensive end. Shooting, efficiency, 3 levels. Free throws, efficient. Can finish in the paint. On contact, through contact, whatever, all of that. His ball handling skills are going to have to grow, but he's good enough to get where he needs to go, and he gets rid of the ball quick enough to where it's not much of a problem at all. The kid is one of the best passers on the team. You look at him as a natural point guard with a lot of size and length, and he draws fouls, aka flops, about as well as anybody in the league. About as well as anybody in the league. So for me, I'm super high on Austin Reeves. His offensive rebounding is worth talking about. The fact that he looks for boards, flies out of nowhere and gets them. His athleticism is there. You just know that Austin Reeves doesn't have a ceiling. He can go as far as he wants to go with his basketball IQ and his ability to be switchable in this league. I'm super excited. He's one of my favorite players in all of basketball. He just so happens to be on my team. And if we're not considering him a breakout, I don't know who is. You know what I mean? And I look at another guy on my squad that I'm very excited about that we just also paid is WeeHours. I think he's going to get more minutes. And I'm curious to see if he's going to prove himself to be the efficient player that he's ultimately shown us he is. The way he was able to help us in these playoffs was stellar. And you consider this was only his second playoffs in his career. In the first playoffs, he didn't get a whole lot of minutes. Throughout his course of his career, he hasn't had a whole lot of minutes. And he steps in with the Lakers and looks like he's been here, knows what he's doing, and is ready for the moment. And I'm glad we brought him back. I think he's a young player. Obviously, when guys get paid, again, you don't love mentioning them in these conversations, but I think our team has a lot to prove as it pertains to the young players we got. We got a bunch of dudes on this team that need opportunities, and they're going to get them. I think about a guy like Cam Reddish. Maybe this can be a year he shows people that he really is one of them dudes. I don't know, but it stands to reason why his name needs to be mentioned in this situation, because he did have a pretty solid upside season from the Portland year last year. And if he can continue that momentum, I think he's going to work himself into a situation where he really steps up and makes some money, just like Malik Monk, just like Lonnie Walker, Schroeder. He's another one of those guys who's going to come in with a 1-year deal and try to see if he can play his value up. And I think that there's a lot of reason to be optimistic that he will be able to do that in a winning situation with the Lakers. So he's on that list for my squad. And there's a bunch of dudes, young guys on this team that I'm not picking them to break out this year. But if they can come together and do so, the Lakers are going to be one of the most dangerous teams in basketball. So look out for my squad. We're coming, and our young fellas are definitely to be excited about. Another name that comes to mind, I'm going to stay in Los Angeles. They have a couple guys over here in Clipperland that I think we should be pretty damn excited about, man. The name that comes to mind for me first is Terrence Mann. And I put his name in here not because I'm expecting him to break out necessarily, but because I know that he's capable of breaking out, and it's time. What would keep him from doing that is the minutes. Obviously, the usage of Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Norman Powell kind of caps him off, and for whatever reason I don't watch them as much, but I think of him as somebody who can play point guard, and it does not appear that they give him the ball to play point guard. So I think that I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's the thing. I can't say, oh, they need to give him the ball to play point. I'm not sure. But what I can say is he was projected to be a guy who could do both. And so I just wonder where his progression is going. I'm not saying that he's a breakout candidate. I'm just simply saying that it's time for him to break out. And in fact, I think it's one of those situations where if he's not breaking out this year, I kind of want him out of Clipperland. If he has another year where he's just kind of a role player after having good playoff moments, good regular season moments throughout the course of his 3-4 years, he's a guy that reminds me of a guy who's on the trajectory of Jaylen Brown when he first got started. Not necessarily where he's at right now, but where he was in the first couple years. The development just came slow because there were always some damn guards or small forwards or somebody in front of him to where he had to play a lesser role, which is another reason why you should be congratulating Jaylen Brown, because if you watched his career trajectory to where he's at signing the highest contract ever, you saw his first couple of years, you knew he could have played a bigger role his rookie season. You knew he could have played a bigger role his second season, and you knew damn well he could play a bigger role in his third season. And he duked it out. He waited it out. He developed, and he allowed himself to endure that and ultimately became the player that he is. So I look at Terrence Mann and I say the same thing. Your trajectory is higher than the Clippers have given you this opportunity to play. They have a bunch of superstar wings, and obviously you're a wing, so you got lost in the fold. And I think this is another season where you could look at him and say that possibly could be the case, but you can also look at him and say if they give him more of a usage, he's already proven himself to be a very, very good player on both sides of the floor. Maybe if they finally have a little more faith in him this year, maybe they don't get James Harden and let him start at the point. Maybe we can start seeing a little bit of that Terrence Mann that we've been seeing glimpses of for the past couple of years. He could break out and do himself a favor and ultimately become the next Jaylen Brown, maybe. I don't know. But the point is, when we look at guys, you got to look at their opportunities. And I just feel like Terrence Mann has done enough for us to be excited about him. Now it's up for the Clippers to get him to the next step as a player. So that's really what it's about. I want to see them let him, take the cuffs off that guy. So that's why I mentioned the Clippers. And, of course, one of my favorite players in the draft, Kobe Brown. I just think he's going to be fantastic, y'all. I don't care nothing about the draft status. I look at him like Austin Reeves, whether he was undrafted, second round or not. Once you see him on the floor, you're going to understand that his draft stock was bogus, basically. So I'm very high on Kobe Brown. I think they got the power forward of the future. I don't think they need to look far for somebody who could really play well for them. And that's one of the steals in the draft, in my opinion. That's honestly one of the steals in the draft. So I'm looking at the Clippers and I'm saying those two guys specifically, I'm keeping an eye on them. And I think the NBA should be excited about those two dudes. I really do. So that's that. We got to keep it going, stay in California, go up to Sacramento. There's two guys that immediately come to mind. I don't know what type of year they're going to have, but I do expect for them to be ready to have a big year if for some reason the usage is available. Keegan Murray. We know Keegan Murray was a fantastic shooter last year. His twin brother just came into the league with the Portland Trail Blazers. Keegan is somebody who's basically started breaking three-point records just to start his career. Like, he is literally one of the best three-point shooters on the planet. He shoots a lot of them, and he's very efficient. And he has some defensive ability. He has some put it on the floor ability. He has some wiggle ability. He's just going to continue to get better. And I do expect all-star appearances will be in his future at some point. So Keegan Murray is definitely a breakout candidate. Ain't no question about that. And another guy that I mentioned a lot on this channel that I really like in Sacramento is Davion Mitchell. Now, I don't know if the role will be there because you got guys like Malik Monk and, of course, De'Aaron Fox and Kevin Huerter. They got a lot of guys. But I'm a big fan of Davion Mitchell defense, and I think his offense is going to start coming around even more so. He's already proven he can do some good things on that side. And so the two-way ability of a guy like Davion, he too needs an opportunity to show that he can do some big things like a Terrence Mann. And once he does that, I'm pretty certain he's going to prove that he is that kind of guy. So I'm waiting on Davion Mitchell. Kind of hopeful he can find his way out of Sacramento, even though they're a winning situation. I don't think he can be his best there so long as he's playing off the bench. But he is a special defensive player, man. Very, very special defensive player. Very strong. And so with this being year 3, it makes a lot of sense to think that he's going to make a substantial jump if the minutes are there. Will the minutes be there? That's my question. I want to skip over to Florida. There's a guy over there in Orlando. It's actually about 10 of them, but it's a few players over there in Orlando that I think are very, very good candidates for this. Franz Wagner just gets incrementally better every single year. Doesn't really have any weaknesses. Almost 7 feet tall. Fast. Can score. Can defend. Can rebound. Can everything. And that's the thing. He can literally do everything. And I just don't forget about him. I know there's a lot of people around the league who don't really pay much attention to the Orlando Magic. When they think of the Orlando Magic, they probably think of hard times and young players. But they got a trio of young guys. Actually, it ain't a trio. It's like a quad or 5 tandem of young dudes that I think could all break out at once at the same exact time. That's the beauty of the timeline they're on and the trajectory of their players. It's such high level. So you look at Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter. And you bring in the young guys, AB and Jet Howard. You just gotta really, really look at the Orlando Magic and say their whole team fits the category of what we're talking about. This is like 10 guys on the roster that legitimately have a chance to be all-stars, in my opinion. About 10 of them. You know, Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs. I'm still high on Jalen Suggs. Jalen Suggs only been in the league for 2 years and hasn't had nothing but injuries. You already know he can play defense. You already know he can play offense. You already know he's not predicated to play above the rim. His skill set doesn't need him to be fast in order to be good. He's got a lot of good natural ability to him. He just needs to get healthy enough to prove that. And he's stuck in the back of the bench in Orlando. If he can get the hell out of there and find himself in a starting situation, he's definitely going to break out. There ain't no question about Jalen Suggs breaking out. He just needs to get into a situation where the minutes are there. And they won't be with Cole Anthony on the squad, who could also break out. I think he has all-star upside. He's a lot better than people think. A lot better. And that's something I'm aware of. When they drafted a point guard with Anthony and Fultz already in place, I just thought that was a little misguided as it pertains to what I expect those two players to turn into. I don't need a guard. I really, really don't need a guard. Now, granted, I could use a big guard, which is why I probably sign off on that if I'm Orlando, taking Anthony Black, because Anthony Black is comparable to the rest of what they have, given the fact that he's 6'8" or whatever it is, and the rest of their roster is huge. So you kind of want your guards to be big. Fultz, Suggs, and Anthony are all three under 6'3", under 6'4". So I totally get the size comparable thing about bringing in Jet Howard and AB. I like those two young players. I don't like Jet Howard at 16 in the draft, but you don't care about that at this point. You just know that he's on the roster and he's going to fit what you do. And so that whole team is a breakout candidate. Wendell Carter is a player who could make an all-star team. I have no doubt about that. Paolo Banchero is going to make all-star teams just about every year. One of the best offensive players maybe ever. And then Franz Wagner is fantastic, man. Franz Wagner is just going to continue to be a perennial all-star as well. And with all three of those guys being above 6'10", how the hell are you guarding that team, NBA? How are you guarding them? So I just think the whole team, the whole Orlando Magic team, is a candidate to break out. And then you got a couple teams like that as well. They're not the only one. Detroit is like that. You got to look at all the young fellas on Detroit. Of course, Cade Cunningham needs to be mentioned in this conversation only because he's coming back from injury. First overall pick about 4 years ago. The injuries have set in, but a lot of people are excited about him. He's having a healthy offseason. And you expect him to come in 100%. You expect him to come in 100%, and hopefully he'll have just as good odds to stay healthy as any other player in this league as to what you expect for him to start the development of being a superstar. That's what he was drafted to be. So I won't be surprised when he plays well. I won't be surprised when he does ridiculously high number stuff, 50-point games or whatever. I don't expect that this year. But throughout the course of his career, Cade Cunningham is going to be a star. The question is can he not have so many injuries derail his upside? And the injuries have already started. But I look at a guy by the name of Michael Jordan, who was out for the entire season his sophomore year, the knee injury, and came back and basically was the GOAT. So I always reference that when I look at guys who have bad injuries to start their careers. Steph Curry had the worst ankles in the league. I tell you guys that all the time. Before the first 4 years of his career, he was injury prone as hell. Couldn't keep him on the floor for longer than 20 games. And then after he overcame that ankle thing, he went on to be one of the GOATs. So I don't think Cade Cunningham is in a space where that can't be his trajectory. He just needs to not have these injury issues continue. And if they don't, he's breaking out. And then you look at Jaden Ivey. I look at him as basically Ja Morant's doppelganger, more or less. They both basically have the same type of stuff going on about them. I think the difference is I like Jaden a little more defensively, and I like Jaden to play the two a bit more fluidly than I would expect Ja Morant to want to slip in and play the two. But other than that, Jaden Ivey's going to be fantastic. His athleticism is crazy. His speed is crazy. His ball handling is really good. ISO ability is strong. I just think the world of Jaden Ivey. He's going to be an all-star player several times over throughout the course of his career, so long as he doesn't have any issues of his own with his development and health. And I just think the floor is above our eyebrows when it comes to those guys. It's really high, man. I don't expect nothing but at least really good play from those guys. So that right there is excellent. And you look at Killian Hayes. I would love for the Detroit Pistons to move on from Killian Hayes. I got a feeling the Detroit Pistons would kind of love to move on from Killian Hayes. It ain't because he can't play. It's just because he doesn't have a path to really becoming that guy. And he really does have some upside. He's a good defensive player. He has some offensive ability, making plays for others. And I just think that the ability for him to be a really good role player in this league is there. Maybe even a little better than that. So I don't know if he can reach his highest point with the Detroit Pistons, but I do expect it. For some reason, Cade has some issues. You'll see a lot of Killian Hayes, and Killian Hayes is proven when you give him a lot of minutes, he can be productive. So I like him as well. And, of course, Detroit Pistons, you got to talk about them centers, man. Wiseman, Duran, Bagley, Isaiah Livers, they all have some upside. Bagley's just really starting to round into form as a player who's shaking off some of those injury issues. And knock on wood, if he can continue to have another good 2 or 3 years, I think Bagley's going to round into form and be somebody we really take seriously in this NBA. He had a really good season last year, and I never thought of him as somebody. First of all, I want to say this about Marvin Bagley. I don't think this is a hot take. I would not have taken him with the second overall pick. I had it like everybody else did. Luka Doncic should have been one. Although Ayton, we all agreed Ayton made the most sense for Phoenix, and I could argue he still makes the most sense for Phoenix when you consider this, what they have and what they needed and what they've done. But you can't look at that and say they shouldn't have taken either De'Aaron Fox or Luka Doncic. However, I said that night, and I still had an understanding of what I thought Bagley would turn into. And to be honest with you, he's turning into what it is I thought he would turn into, which is a solid shot blocker, can rebound the ball, score a little bit, hot and motor. It's just taking them longer to develop. But I tell people it takes guys 4 years to develop. And if they have injury issues, you got to knock off 2 of those years. So we're on schedule with Marvin Bagley. I want people to know that. Marvin Bagley is on schedule to be a late bloomer. Now, I don't think he has all-star upside, but he has starter in the NBA for the next 5-year upside. And because he's in a situation where he's not going to be a starter, he's going to be a really, really good player for the Detroit Pistons in that role. So I think he's in a good spot. You don't expect for him to develop into something much better than this right now, but this is good. And he's going to make some money so long as he can stay healthy. So he's a shot blocker. He can rebound. He can score in the paint. And I just think he's going to be a solid player in this league for many years to come, so long as the injuries don't continue to pile on. So I like Marvin Bagley in this conversation. I think he's going to continue to play well next to those massive centers in Wiseman and Duran, who I obviously have on this list. I don't know how they're going to rotate those dudes. I think those dudes need their own teams as centers. But for now, it makes a lot of sense to just let them to develop together. They're going to have a chance to go up against each other in practice every day. That's going to make them both better. And I just think they got 2 all-star centers on one team right now. Probably don't have a future in Detroit. Long term, not both of them. But for now, you're going to love having those young kids on this team, man. You're going to love it. And so Detroit, I expect to have a breakout year, just like Orlando. They're going to probably slip into the play-in tournament, maybe replace a Toronto, maybe replace Miami. If Miami doesn't get Dame, they're headed downward, in my opinion. So look out for the Detroit Pistons, man. Do not sleep on the Pistons, just like I don't want y'all to sleep on the Pacers. They just got some really, really good young talent. The draft has been kind to these teams. Of course, the next team you got to talk about in this conversation is the Houston Rockets. I mean, it's almost low-hanging fruit for me, BDF44, to mention the Houston Rockets, since I've just hyped them up for the last 2 or 3 years since I realized what they were putting together. And I felt like they did some things in the offseason I didn't necessarily agree with at all. But they didn't get rid of enough to make me feel like they lost what they have, which is what I was worried about when this process began. I thought they were going to shave off too many of those young players. But I think they did some good shaving, so to speak. They got rid of some ones they weren't using and kept the guys that had the highest upside. And maybe they still make some trades. But for now, they still have a lot that makes me think they're still on the trajectory to be one of the greatest young teams to ever be assembled. And I don't know if I can mention all of those guys and put enough emphasis on just how excited you should be about them going into this season. You should be. Not to say that you expect them to win 50 games, but they're capable of winning 75 games because that's how much talent is actually on that roster. If they all play to the highest level of their highest selves, they're going to beat everybody. I'm just telling you right now, they're going to beat everybody. They have higher level talent than pretty much anybody in the league from top to bottom as it pertains to what you expect each and every player to ultimately be when they finally fully develop. They got the most talented team in the league, basically. From player to player to player, you think they're all going to be all-stars. So that is really the situation in Houston. Um, Sans nobody. Don't exclude any of those young players. It's about 9 of them, and they all are going to be breakout candidates. So I don't know how Udoka's going to rotate the minutes. Obviously, they won't all break out, but the ones he uses, I expect the world from. Simple as that. They're too high a level of talent as a collective to not make noise this season. So look out for all of them. Jabari Smith, Terry Eason, KPJ, Jalen Green, obviously Cam Whitmore, and Eamon Thompson. I mean, you got to understand, like, I don't know if I'm looking at this the right way, but I really do think this is one of the most talented teams the NBA's ever put together. Alperen Sengun, all the dudes got an upside that's like MVP, huh? Jabari Smith Jr., y'all see the type of game he put together in the offseason? I mean, all the scouts that I've been listening to pretty much said he was the most surprising player in the Summer League. And how much of a jump he's made from last year to this year. They think he's going to be an all-star maybe this year. So for me, the Houston Rockets are a no-brainer. I think the trajectory of their roster is probably as wide as any I've seen in my lifetime. Based on they could be a team that could win 15 games and suck really, really bad and tank it out and continue to add young talent to it. Or they can be a team that is the best team on the league as a whole. If Ime Udoka does what he did in Boston and all of those kids play the way that I expect them to play, I don't know why they can't be one of the top teams in the Western Conference. I don't know why they couldn't. The only thing that would keep them from doing that is guys continuing to be immature and the moves that they made in the offseason, tanking them to the floor, which I don't expect. Fred VanVleet is a hell of a star. Dylan Brooks is a hell of a defender. So, you know, when you look at the on-ball ability of those two players alone, you got to feel good about them defensively getting better. Jeff Green, you got better defensively. And that's really where they sucked horribly last year. So I like the acquisition of the center that they got from Phoenix. You know, and they just did some things. Even though I don't love the contracts, the pieces that they brought together should make for some more maturity, and the players that they still have left over should make for the bulk of what it is that they actually use. And that, like I said, adding Fred VanVleet to that, you got to choose this team as one of the best young breakout candidate squads there is. So just like I said about Detroit and Orlando, and likely the Pacers as well, you got to look at their entire team and just say breakout candidate, everybody. So that's what it is. It's entire teams that you expect to step forward with a plethora of young players. Look at the Charlotte Hornets. I think that you can consider, guys on that team in regards to breakouts. I look at a guy like Mark Williams, who I think could break out this year. Kai Jones, if he gets some minutes, break out. Richards, he broke out last year. You know what I mean? So they just got a bunch of young players that you love. Book Knight, if he can finally get some minutes. The young players that they just picked up, the rookies. Bailey is excellent. Smith is excellent. Obviously, LaMelo is a superstar. You know he's going to be an all-star this year if he's healthy. It's just another one of those young teams that are stacked completely. They are super stacked right now. They also have one of the best young teams in the league. And if you look at that Charlotte Hornets team, you ain't got to go too far to look for breakouts, especially if they're going to continue to allow players to walk. Oubre's gone. PJ's likely gone. And I want to correct a mistake I made earlier today. I just misspoke. I said that Christian Wood and those two were also on the same team. Obviously, Christian was with Dallas. I had the Blues mixed up. So those who watched my video earlier today, I'm aware I made a mistake. But nevertheless, they're letting those two players go. I would love for them to continue to shave salary, maybe get Hayward and Rozier out of there so you can really see the players that are ultimately breakout candidates get the minutes that will allow them to do that. So that's really what it is. Mitch Kupchak could stand to make some addition by subtraction trades. And if that happens, add them to the list. The whole team. Add them to the list. I just love what they have. All them young dudes have a chance to be ridiculously good this season. So that's where this video is kind of taking me, just to the understanding that whole teams, are more so looking to break out than necessarily just one or two young players. Most teams have young players that you should be excited about. Even the Phoenix Suns, I look over at a guy like Bol. He's one. I'm definitely excited about him breaking out, doing some good things. And there's a guy over in Washington that I think is going to get a high level of usage this year. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to hear me say Jordan Poole's name. He is definitely somebody who's going to break out. No, he's an NBA champion. He's got probably over $150 million in the bank. So putting him in the breakout category is kind of weird, just like putting Garland and those guys, LaMelo in there. But I do think that he's somebody, if he gets a chance to have a really healthy season, you're looking at somebody who's going to do a lot of work out there. So, that's really what it is, man. Hold teams. And, if Bol can just find a way to continue the trajectory that he was on in Orlando, I think that's enough from within what it is the Phoenix Suns have to keep them a very, very contending team this year. All they need from Bol is 8 points, 2 blocks, and that's basically what he was given the Orlando Magic. You don't expect him to rebound as much as a guy his size just yet because he's not as strong as he's going to be. You don't know where the maturity's at. I think he's going to have to continue to work on that. But all in all, the Phoenix Suns got him at the right time, on the right price for their circumstance, and he is an entirely too high of a level talent to stick next to those 3 Hall of Fame non-missing players and expect him not to have a massive impact. Bol, if healthy, is going to have a massive impact on the Phoenix Suns. Massive. And for all those Bol haters out there, mark my words, massive. So that's what I'm telling people. Do not underestimate how little help Phoenix needed and how much help they got just by adding that one player at a very, very affordable price. That is scary to me. And so Phoenix is definitely at the top of the list of teams that I think can win the championship. And I don't think that I feel as high about them without that piece. So these are things that we're thinking about right now. The NBA continues to give us nothing in the summertime, but I'm trying to give y'all what I got. And this continues. There's so many other teams that have young players that need to be mentioned in this conversation. I only got about 5 minutes left to talk, which is why it sounds like I'm wrapping it up, but I could do this for another 35 minutes. Y'all know that. But, all in all, we just love what this draft gave us. All the teams that got players out of this draft, I think you got a chance to add a real solid player. I don't think there's anybody, and I mean anybody in this draft, that I don't like. Even the Denver guys that they picked up that I wasn't so high on. I think they got some guys. Hunter, I don't know his name. Is I think his last name is Hunter, first name, I don't know. But this guy is a lot better than I played him on draft night. I was like, oh, they took him over the guy that my Lakers took. What the hell were they thinking? Well, I still like my guy. But I'm definitely higher on the Hunter kid than I was on draft night. So let that be in this camera. He's going to be a real player for them. And also just double back. I've mentioned Marcus Sasser in Detroit. He's a rookie. I mentioned the Detroit Pistons already, but I do think he's going to be a hell of a player. He's also somebody who's going to be pushing Killian Hayes and those guys at the guard spot for minutes. But I wanted to throw him in here because I really did a little more homework on him, and he just continues to impress with the highlights that I've seen. He's going to be better than people thought draft day. So, yeah, man, I wish I could have did a little more in regards to this. Maybe I should have wrote down some names because it's definitely, and I mean definitely some names that I like even more than the ones I mentioned. But like I said, I'm winging it, so that's what I have in regards to that. But, 2 minutes left, man. Got to create some space on this phone, man. I hate making videos that aren't necessarily the fullness of my thoughts, but we only use the space we have, and I tell you guys I love what I do, so that's pretty much what I can give you, man. Of course, I'll continue to give you guys Laker content, NBA content, as I always do. And that is the conclusion of this video. So I thank everybody for rocking BDF44, and I'm out.